Welcome back. You're still watching World Inside with me, Tian Wei. The program comes to you Monday to Friday on CGTN. Let's turn our attention now to DPRK, where follow-ups to the June the 12th Singapore summit are taking place. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is set to visit Pyongyang on July the 5th. Later this week, continuing the two countries' negotiations after the summit. This will be his third trip, at least on public information, to the country, but the first after Singapore talks. DPRK leader Kim Jong Un, meanwhile, visited the northern factories bordering China. He urged the country's industries to modernize and to improve the lives of citizens. The DPRK's Vice Minister of External Economic Affairs, Mr. Ku Bong-tae, traveled to Beijing on Monday. These could all indicate the DPRK's efforts to open up to the world. Some say, well, really? What sort of changes could we expect to see on the peninsula as a result of all the latest development? Let's turn to our panelists. With us in Beijing, we have once again Zhao Tong here. Thank you so much, sir, for being with us once again. And also, we are joined in Seoul, Yoon-jung Lim, Assistant Professor at the College of International Relations with Ritsumeikan University, and also in Boston, U.S., Jim Walsh, Senior Research Associate at the Securities Program at Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Welcome to the three of you. A lot of developments in Singapore summit. The U.S. said, Mr. Walsh, 1 year, that's all what the DPRK needs to denuclearize. And of course, according to Mr. Bolton, who has been extremely optimistic this time, very opposite to his earlier attitudes. So what is going on here?
Well, I would say Mr. Bolton's comments are actually a way for him to try to get his way here. He doesn't want a negotiation and an agreement with North Korea. He has to play along because his boss, President Trump, who tweeted this morning in favor of the summit and U.S.-North Korean relations, wants a deal. And so what he's trying to do is put an artificial limit on, a year or we're out. And really, experts, my friends, including Sig Hecker, head of a former U.S. weapons lab, it's going to take more than a year. It's going to take years. Now, you can make a lot of progress in a year, but I think that is an artificial deadline. I think the real question is whether this process will survive a year. Are North Koreans going to take enough steps to keep the president engaged and continuing to tweet positively?
Right.
And there's been some rumblings here in the U.S., some leaking from the intelligence community that is throwing cold water on some of this. So that's where we're at right now. But I think the president certainly wants to move forward, even if the intelligence community and Mr. Bolton are more skeptical.
Okay. Ms. Lim. Well, we remember that photo op opportunity, right? I mean, in Singapore, when the two were sitting behind the table, they were signing their documents, the world is paying attention to them, and President Trump is extremely happy. So 1 month from then, do we have anything as so-called concrete plan, at least some roadmap, or at least some baby steps toward a final goal, if the goal is denuclearization and security guarantee at the same time?
Okay, thank you for that question, and I hear your voice. It sounds like we have some skepticism or like a deep concern about how really North Korea will be seriously again engaged in the complete denuclearization that they already promised with the United States and with South Korea. Again, I have a cautious mind as well because even at the summit with our President Moon Jae-in, or even with the summit with the American President, Mr. Trump, we didn't have a concrete words or concrete timeline for the complete denuclearization. Having said that, I mean, I have some more like that kind of cautious mind, or kind of again, we need to be careful, of course, about the process or methodology. But as long as again they signed up for again quotation mark complete denuclearization, as long as the goal is set up, I think it pretty much dependent on what we are going to do. And Mr. Pompeo's visit to Pyongyang this week, I think that this is one very big, meaningful and starting step toward a more concrete process. I think.
Well, I see our American counterpart also, Mr. Washington, keep on nodding his head for now. But Mr. Zhao, I mean, the DPRK leader, Mr. Kim, only went to China after the Singapore summit. And that's the only place he went outside his country. And of course, Secretary Pompeo is now going to his country, the DPRK. But the question is there any sign that the Chinese side also shown after Mr. Kim's visit to China about any concrete plan that the other side suggested?
Well, there is no real evidence that North Korea has made any decision to completely denuclearize very soon. In China, when Kim Jong Un was in China after the Singapore summit, there were...
Mr. Zhao, may I remind you, we are not just talking about the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. We're also talking about the peace and security guarantee for DPRK. Remember, that is exactly in the same document, the document signed between the two leaders of the United States and also DPRK.
Right, exactly. When Chairman Kim was in Beijing after Singapore summit, reportedly, Chinese President Xi Jinping, when he met with Kim, they both emphasized the importance of establishing a peace regime over the Korean Peninsula in order to facilitate the process of denuclearization. China very much wants to play a role in that process. China can help provide some security guarantee to North Korea, and also a multilateral security regime with Chinese participation can provide more reassuring message to North Korea than a unilateral security guarantee from the United States. And also China made the point that by trying to help North Korea develop its economy will help reintegrate North Korea back into the international system. In the long run, building economic interdependence is the best way to make North Korea feel safe and secure enough to be less obsessed with nuclear weapons.
Mr. Walsh, you see quite some signs coming from the DPRK. According to the U.S. side and the South Korean side, the DPRK seems to continue to build its hardware toward producing more nuclear-related possibilities. Let's just put it that way. And also you see the DPRK leader, Mr. Kim Jong Un, visited the factories along the border between DPRK and China. He also has showing his fascination about agricultural technologies when he was visiting China, when he was talking to Chinese President Xi Jinping. So you see that he is also trying to show to the outside world, if the information were correct, coming from the intelligence services, that he is going both ways. Security guarantee, that is, of course, to continue for them to develop nuclear according to their thought, and also economic development to change DPRK into a normal country.
Well, yes, well, that's Kim's Bingjun policy, right, is to have both economic development and nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
And the idea is since the summit, he's changed that and willing to give it up. But to the earlier comments and your questions, it's important to remember that we've inverted the process. Normally you have a negotiation that works out all the details, comes up with a roadmap. Then the heads of state meet, they agree, and then they implement it because they already have a plan. We have reversed that.
Yes.
They have met first, there is no plan, and now they have to negotiate a roadmap, and that is going to take time. Now, in the meantime, I expect North Korea to sort of, just as the U.S. is going to keep sanctions, I expect North Korea to maintain its nuclear infrastructure, not do anything provocative, no tests, but it will maintain that infrastructure until there is an agreement, because it's going to say, well, why should I give anything up unless I know what I'm getting, and no one knows because there isn't a roadmap.
Right. Mr. Lim, Ms. Lim, I mean, the U.S. side and the South Korean side already suspended, let's just say, the very mild version of their joint military exercises. That was, of course, announced by President Trump, which took the Defense Department in the U.S. quite a surprise. But having said that, though, do you read any sign coming from the U.S. about the security guarantee other than that as to what the U.S. could do? If Secretary Pompeo is going to Pyongyang, he's better bring both the pressure and the gift at the same time. What could be his gift?
Yes, sure. Yeah, I'm trying to actually understand what really Kim Jong Un regime is concerned about, his or their own regime. But what actually U.S. can provide as a security guarantee, it can be pretty much limited. And I do personally think the summit, again, the historic bilateral, the first ever summit between the American president, Mr. Trump, and Mr. Kim, that actually means many things. Because as long as, again, Washington closed the door toward North Korea, nothing probably could have started. But now Washington opened up the door, and they show that, I mean, now we are ready also for the changes. So my point is, now it's the time for North Korea to show something. Again, all the summit historically changed, transformed the oldest configuration, or again the geopolitical configuration as well. And having said that, again, now I think board went back to the North Korean side, and if they show something pretty much like significant or like meaningful, probably we will can provide another. But as long as, again, the situation is like this, again, I think now it's the time for us actually to wait for something from North Korea.
Okay, let's just think about this, ladies and gentlemen. You know, if maintaining the status quo, whose interest is going to be it? Is it going to be more for the interest of DPRK? They can benefit more, or remaining the status quo will benefit the Trump administration, at least before the midterm election, if the DPRK did not test fire anything, if it did not build more hardware, and in a way, things apparently disappear from the public scene and only behind-the-scene negotiations. So which one do you think is going to benefit more, Mr. Zhao? This is important.
Yeah, I think North Korea is going to benefit a lot. It gets to keep its existing nuclear capabilities while still improving relations with the United States. For the United States, I think President Trump will benefit as long as he can continue projecting this image that he's still being successful in negotiating with North Korea. He can still get additional concessions from North Korea. The diplomacy continues on the path of success, and there is more to come in the future down the road. And that is going to be beneficial for him for the near-term election, etc. But for the mainstream American experts and also some conservative American officials, they are going to lose because they believe the only goal that is worth trying all these efforts is near-term denuclearization. As long as that goal is not achieved, the U.S. is going to be the loser from their perspective.
Mr. Walsh, I mean, transactional president, this is exactly the time for him to shine, isn't it? It's about negotiation. You do your transactional tricks. But, Mr. Walsh, we didn't see President Trump, besides the tweets, in any way to push his administration to go towards some specific goals for specific timing. And we don't want to forget, Mr. Walsh, his approval rating actually was getting much higher at the time when he was sitting down with the DPRK leader Kim Jong Un in Singapore. Of course, whether you believe him, approval rating is another thing. But Mr. Walsh, help us to understand this.
Yeah, well, I think the polling data is very straightforward. Americans are a little skeptical, but they favor this process. They approve of President Trump going to the summit. They approve of a policy of engagement because they don't want a war. And so his numbers did go up on that. Now, I don't think Mr. Trump is a very detail-oriented policy person.
Not really.
I don't think he's going to be asking every day, you know, have we closed this facility? Have we disposed of this plutonium? I think he tends to jump around from issue to issue. And so it's really going to be up to the Secretary of State. And essentially, he doesn't have much support. There's no special representative from the U.S. to North Korea. It's going to be up to the Secretary of State to keep this moving, and he has a lot of other stuff on his plate. But to your previous question, I think all the parties benefit for the reasons that my colleague said, that North Korea and the U.S., or at least Mr. Trump, politically benefit.
Right.
But so does South Korean President Moon, and so does China. China wants peace and stability. It doesn't want missile and nuclear tests.
Right.
And so in some way, if the status quo is quiet, everyone wins.
Okay, Ms. Lim, we only have a minute left. Before we go, I want to ask you about this family reunion. Going to be an extremely sentimental, extremely emotional moment. We remember that when we were covering that story. It's coming up later in August. Will this be a time for President of South Korea to shine again? Will this status quo good for him politically, and therefore this is likely what's going to be?
Well, the family reunion issue, of course, many politicians will be pretty much interested in that kind of event, very, emotional event. But it is not only about, political event or political performance. It is for our humanitarian human rights issue. Again, majority of the separated family members, they are now aging very rapidly, and many of them are, again, year by year, we're losing them. So definitely it's going to be, of course, an emotional moment, but at the same time, I want to highlight that that's also related to the human rights issue.
All right. We are running out of our time for this round of discussion, but I'm sure, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to come back again and discuss further about all the latest development. Keep them coming. For now, thank you so much, Zhao Tong, Yunjong Lim, and Jim Walsh. Really appreciate it. Thank you. And that is all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more, try to find us World Insight CGTN into your search engine or check out our YouTube channel. You can also follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Sina Weibo. From me, Tian Wei, and to everyone on the World Insight team, thanks for watching. Tune in again next time for insights across China and around the world. Good night.